15 iconic Hollywood stars, whose voices once filled theaters, radios, and hearts, silenced forever by the cruel grip of throat cancer. Behind the glamour, these legends fought a battle few ever saw. Tonight, we uncover the haunting final chapters of their lives, stories the spotlight never told. Number 1. Sammy Davis Jr. In May of the year 1990, the world lost one of its brightest entertainers. For months before his death, Sammy had been fighting a relentless battle with throat cancer, a disease that slowly stripped away the very thing that made him unforgettable: his voice. The man who once lit up stages with his songs, dances, and laughter could no longer speak without pain. Doctors had warned him years earlier that his heavy smoking and constant performing put his throat at great risk. But, like many artists, he believed his passion would outlive his body. During the final months, friends recalled how he tried to stay strong, smiling through agony. His close circle, including Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, visited him often, sitting quietly by his bedside as he struggled to whisper even a few words. Sammy refused to have his larynx removed despite the doctor's recommendation. He told his wife, Altovise, that losing his voice would mean losing himself. That decision gave him only a few more months, but it also preserved his dignity as a performer who lived and died by the power of expression. Those who saw him in his last public appearances remembered a man still elegant in his tailored suits, still greeting fans with that radiant charm. Though his voice had turned hoarse and frail, he performed for the last time at a tribute concert honoring his 50 years in show business. When he tried to sing, his words came out broken, yet the audience rose to their feet, clapping through tears. It was not the voice that mattered anymore, it was the soul behind it. In his final days at his Beverly Hills home, Sammy found comfort in prayer and jazz records that once defined his youth. His wife and adopted son were by his side when he took his last breath. The headlines the next morning spoke of the end of the Rat Pack era, a time when entertainment was pure showmanship, and Sammy Davis Jr. was its heartbeat. Even now, decades later, his rhythm, his smile, and his courage remain symbols of a man who refused to fade quietly into the dark. Number 2. Lana Turner. In June of the year 1992, the glamorous star of Hollywood's golden age received a diagnosis that would forever change her life: throat cancer. For decades, Lana had been known for her husky, seductive voice, a trademark that added allure to her performances in classic films like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Peyton Place. But behind that legendary beauty and voice, years of chain smoking had quietly built the foundation for tragedy. The news struck her with silent disbelief. Friends recalled how she kept her diagnosis secret at first, refusing to let the public see her weakness. She had faced scandals, heartbreaks, and broken marriages, but this time the enemy was inside her body. Treatments began almost immediately with surgery and radiation, but the pain was excruciating. Her once radiant voice grew faint. Her laughter became whispers. She spent long hours at home, surrounded by photographs of her glory days. The same face that had once graced magazine covers, now pale and fragile. During the following years, she fought the disease with remarkable grace. She continued to appear in small public events, wearing elegant scarves to hide the scars of her treatment. Reporters noted her unwavering poise, even when her speech became slurred and her energy faded. Her daughter, Cheryl Crane, remained close by her side, offering strength and comfort through each painful procedure. Lana told her, "I lived my life like a movie, and every movie must have an ending." By the spring of 1995, her condition worsened rapidly. The cancer had spread, and the woman once celebrated as one of Hollywood's most desirable icons could no longer leave her bed. When she passed away quietly at her Century City apartment in June, the news stunned an industry that had long adored her. Across the country, theaters dimmed their lights in memory of the screen goddess whose beauty had defined an era. Today, Lana Turner is remembered not only for her glamour but for her courage. She faced her final role without a script, without applause, and without fear. Her story reminds us that even the brightest stars can fall silent, but their light once born from passion and pain never truly fades. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below and let us know which Hollywood legend you remember most. Number 3. John Mahoney. In February of the year 2018, Hollywood mourned the loss of a man whose voice and presence had warmed millions of hearts. John passed away in Chicago after a brief battle with throat cancer. the same illness that had quietly shadowed his final years. To audiences, he would always be Martin Crane, the gruff yet loving father from the beloved series Frasier. Off-screen, he was gentle, private, and deeply devoted to his craft. Friends later revealed that John had known about his cancer long before his death, but chose to keep it away from the spotlight. He hated pity and preferred to be remembered for his work, not his suffering. Even as the illness grew worse, he continued performing in Chicago theater, appearing in productions that demanded strength and stamina most would have thought impossible. His colleagues at the Steppenwolf Theater recalled how he arrived early, rehearsed every line with precision, and never once complained about his pain. John's final months were marked by quiet dignity. He withdrew from public appearances, spending more time at home surrounded by close friends and his 2 beloved dogs. Those who visited him said he still laughed easily, his humor untouched by illness. He often spoke about his gratitude for having lived the life he did from being an immigrant from England to becoming a cherished American actor. In those conversations, he never mentioned regret, only thankfulness for the love he had received from fans and fellow performers. In his last days, John's voice grew weaker, a cruel twist for a man known for the warmth in his tone. Yet when his friends from the Frasier cast called to check on him, he insisted on speaking, if only to say how much he appreciated them. When news of his passing broke, tributes poured in from every corner of Hollywood. Kelsey Grammer called him a gentleman of the first order. David Hyde Pierce said that working beside him was like having a second father. John Mahoney left no scandals, no headlines of excess, only a legacy of kindness, talent, and authenticity. His death was quiet, his life full, and his memory still lives in the laughter of every episode that made him immortal. Number 4. Miguel Ferrer. In January of the year 2017, Hollywood lost one of its most distinctive voices. Miguel passed away at his Los Angeles home, surrounded by his family after battling throat cancer for more than a year. Known for his sharp intensity and deep, commanding tone, he built a career portraying tough, complex characters in films like RoboCop, Traffic, and television series such as Twin Peaks and NCIS Los Angeles. The diagnosis came quietly. Friends said Miguel continued to work even while undergoing treatment, hiding his struggle behind his professionalism. During the filming of NCIS Los Angeles, cast members noticed that his voice had grown raspier, his energy slightly dimmer, yet he refused to step away from the camera. To him, acting was not just a career, but a rhythm of life, something that kept him connected to the world despite his pain. In his final months, Miguel worked tirelessly to complete his scenes, often joking with the crew to keep the atmosphere light. He knew his time was limited, but he wanted to leave something meaningful behind. His colleagues recalled how he would rest between takes, sipping water and taking short breaths before returning to set as if nothing were wrong. That quiet determination defined his spirit until the end. Miguel came from a family steeped in artistry. He was the son of singer Jose Ferrer and Hollywood legend Rosemary Clooney, and the cousin of actor George Clooney. Creativity ran in his blood, but fame never consumed him. He preferred a quiet life with his wife Lori and their sons, rarely appearing at public events unless it was for a cause he believed in. Even as cancer spread, he kept a sense of humor, often saying that laughter was the one medicine that did not need a prescription. On the morning of his death, those close to him described the moment as peaceful. Music played softly in the background, the same kind his mother used to sing. His passing was followed by tributes across Hollywood, from fans and friends who remembered him not only as a gifted actor, but as a man of warmth, wit, and integrity. Miguel Ferrer's final performance aired posthumously, his voice echoing one last time, steady and unforgettable, reminding the world that true talent never truly fades. Number 5. Richard Boone. In January of the year 1981, the world said goodbye to a man whose rugged face and resonant voice had defined an entire generation of Western heroes. Richard Boone passed away in St. Augustine, Florida, after a long battle with throat cancer that had silenced the commanding voice once heard across countless television screens. Known best for his role as Paladin in the hit series Have Gun, Will Travel, he was admired for his quiet strength and moral depth on screen. His illness began to reveal itself in the late 1970s. Friends noticed that his once powerful baritone had grown strained, his words shorter, his energy waning. Doctors diagnosed throat cancer, a consequence of years of smoking cigars and the exhausting pace of his career. Despite the pain, Richard refused to retreat from life. He continued to act in smaller projects and took great pride in mentoring young performers. Those close to him recalled his determination to keep working, saying he did not want sympathy, only the chance to finish what he had started. As the disease progressed, he moved back to Florida, far from the noise of Hollywood. There he lived a simpler life, surrounded by books, paintings, and memories of his years on set. Visitors often found him sitting on the porch, gazing out at the sea, reflecting on the characters he had brought to life. Though speaking became difficult, he still carried an air of quiet authority, the same presence that made audiences believe every line he delivered. By the winter of 1980, his condition worsened rapidly. Treatments had failed, and his body weakened. Yet he never lost his sense of humor or his pride. He told a friend that he wanted to be remembered not as a cowboy or a star, but as a man who tried to live with integrity. When he passed away early the following year, it felt like the closing of a chapter in American television history. Richard Boone left behind a body of work that continues to inspire. His performances, marked by honesty and restraint, remain timeless reminders of a Hollywood era built on grit and authenticity. Though cancer took his voice, it could never silence the legacy of the man who gave so much of himself to every role he played. Number 6. Richard Barthelmess. In August of the year 1963, the curtain quietly fell on one of the earliest and most influential stars of Hollywood's silent era. Richard Barthelmess, once adored by audiences for his expressive face and gentle voice, passed away from throat cancer at Southampton Hospital in New York. He was 68 years old, far removed from the glamour of the film sets that had once defined his youth. During the 1920s, Richard was a name that carried weight equal to legends like Rudolph Valentino and Douglas Fairbanks. He earned fame through his emotional performances in films such as Broken Blossoms and The Patent Leather Kid, the latter earning him one of the first Academy Award nominations in history. But when sound arrived in cinema, his soft-spoken voice, admired by some, limiting to others, became a symbol of the painful transition from silent to talking pictures. Still, he persisted, adapting to the new era and building a career that spanned more than 2 decades. By the late 1950s, Richard had retired completely from acting. He spent his later years near Southampton, living quietly and avoiding public attention. Friends described him as reflective but content, often speaking fondly of the early days when cameras were hand-cranked and acting came from the eyes, not the dialogue. It was during these peaceful years that he began to experience pain in his throat, which doctors later confirmed to be cancer. Treatment options at the time were limited, and Richard chose to face his illness with quiet acceptance. As the disease advanced, his once steady voice weakened until he could speak only in whispers. Those who visited him said he still had the same calm, gentle demeanor that had made him beloved decades earlier. He spent his final summer reading, walking the garden, and listening to the sound of waves near his home. When the news of his death reached Hollywood, few young stars recognized his name. Yet among historians and film lovers, it was understood that a true pioneer had gone. Richard Barthelmess represented an age when emotion spoke louder than words. His passing reminded the world that while voices fade and faces disappear from the screen, the emotions they once stirred remain forever alive in the hearts of those who remember. If this story touched you, share your thoughts and let others know which classic star you believe still deserves to be remembered. Number 7. Brian Donlevy. In April of the year 1972, the curtain closed on one of Hollywood's most recognizable tough men. Brian Donlevy passed away in Woodland Hills, California, after suffering from throat cancer that had slowly taken away his strength and his commanding voice. He was remembered by his peers as a disciplined professional, a man whose stern gaze and clipped speech brought authority to every role he played. Brian's career began in the silent era but reached its height in the 1930s and 40s, when he starred in films like Beau Geste, Destry Rides Again, and The Great McGinty. His performances earned him an Academy Award nomination and the respect of directors who valued his reliability. Off-camera, he was known as witty, generous, and surprisingly gentle for someone who often portrayed villains or soldiers. But behind his strong image, years of heavy smoking and alcohol use quietly damaged his health. By the late 1960s, Brian's voice began to fail him. Friends noticed the change. His speech became raspy. His energy diminished. Doctors diagnosed throat cancer, a reality he faced with stoic resolve. He underwent several treatments, but avoided public discussion of his illness, preferring to retreat from Hollywood's gaze. His final years were spent in near seclusion, living quietly in California and focusing on writing letters to old friends and former co-stars. Those who visited him in his last months recalled a man still sharp in mind, filled with stories of a bygone Hollywood. He often spoke about how much the industry had changed, from film noir grit to the glossy spectacle of modern cinema. Even as he grew weaker, he kept his sense of humor. When a friend asked if he missed the spotlight, Brian smiled faintly and said, "The light was never mine. I just borrowed it for a while." In his final days, nurses described him as calm and dignified, listening to old radio plays and the sounds of jazz. When he passed, tributes came from both sides of the Atlantic, from colleagues who remembered his professionalism and audiences who had admired his powerful screen presence. Brian Donlevy's voice may have fallen silent, but his legacy as one of Hollywood's most steadfast actors continues to echo through every role he left behind. Number 8. Jay Thomas. In August of the year 2017, Hollywood lost a familiar face and one of its most beloved comedic voices. Jay Thomas passed away in Santa Barbara, California, after a long and private battle with throat cancer. For years, he had entertained audiences with his sharp humor and unmistakable New York accent, bringing life to memorable roles in shows like Cheers, Murphy Brown, and Ray Donovan. His illness was not widely known. Jay continued to appear on television and radio long after his diagnosis, often downplaying the pain that came with his condition. He had been a regular guest on David Letterman's Christmas shows, where his annual retelling of a hilarious holiday story became a fan tradition. Behind that laughter, however, his throat had already begun to fail him. Those closest to him said that even when speaking became difficult, he never lost his ability to make others laugh. By the spring of 2017, his health had deteriorated. He reduced his public appearances, focusing instead on his family, his wife Sally, and their sons Samuel and Jacob. Friends remembered how deeply devoted he was to them, often saying that being a father was his proudest role. In private moments, he would record short voice messages for his children, knowing that one day his words would be all they had left of his voice. Throughout his career, Jay built a reputation as a man who could find humor in the darkest corners of life. His colleagues described him as fearless and unapologetically authentic, the kind of actor who never took fame too seriously. When news of his death broke, tributes poured in from across the entertainment world. Candice Bergen called him one of the most naturally funny men she had ever known. Fans shared clips of his performances, celebrating the timing and warmth that made his comedy timeless. In his final days, Jay faced the disease with grace and acceptance. His friends said he wanted to be remembered for making people smile, not for the illness that silenced him. He left behind not just laughter, but a sense of joy that transcended the screen. Jay Thomas's voice may have faded, but the echoes of his humor still linger wherever laughter is needed most. Number 9. Erin Moran. In April of the year 2017, the quiet news of her death spread through Hollywood and left fans heartbroken. Erin, once the radiant teenager from the beloved sitcom Happy Days, had passed away at her home in Indiana. The coroner's report later revealed the cause complications from stage 4 throat cancer. For a generation that had grown up watching her as Joni Cunningham, it was a painful reminder of how fleeting fame and youth can be. In her early years, Erin embodied the golden image of American television innocence. She joined the cast of Happy Days when she was only 14, and her smile made her a household name. As the years went by, though, Hollywood moved on, and the offers stopped coming. The spotlight that had once embraced her turned away, leaving her to face financial struggles and personal battles that became tabloid headlines. When she was diagnosed with cancer, she had already been living far from Los Angeles, seeking peace and anonymity. Friends later said that the disease had progressed quickly. She began experiencing difficulty swallowing and speaking, symptoms she initially ignored until the pain became unbearable. By the time doctors identified the cancer, it had already spread beyond recovery. Her husband, Steve Fleischman, cared for her at home, keeping her comfortable as her strength faded. He later wrote that Erin faced the illness with quiet courage, never complaining, never asking for pity. Those who knew her best described her final months as peaceful. She spent her days listening to music, looking at old photos from her acting days and reflecting on the simpler times before fame. Her husband said that despite everything, she still smiled when fans sent letters or messages online, thanking her for the joy she had given them decades earlier. When her death was confirmed, co-stars like Henry Winkler and Ron Howard shared heartfelt tributes, calling her a bright spirit taken too soon. They remembered her laughter, her energy, and the light she brought to every scene. Erin Moran's passing closed a bittersweet chapter in television history. Though her voice was silenced by cancer, her youthful warmth and charm remain immortal in reruns that continue to play in living rooms around the world. Number 10. Jack Hawkins. In July of the year 1973, the world lost one of its most commanding voices from the golden age of cinema. Jack Hawkins passed away in London after complications from throat cancer and a series of surgeries that had left him unable to speak. For decades, his deep, steady voice had been his greatest tool, shaping unforgettable performances in epic films like Ben-Hur, The Bridge on the River Kwai, and Lawrence of Arabia. When that voice was gone, it felt as though part of classic British cinema had fallen silent with him. His illness began in the early 1960s, at the height of his fame. He had long been a heavy smoker, often seen with a cigarette between takes, a habit shared by many actors of his generation. The first signs came when he struggled to project his lines during a film shoot. Doctors soon confirmed his worst, throat cancer. In 1966, they removed his larynx, leaving him permanently unable to speak. For an actor whose livelihood depended on his voice, it was a devastating blow. Jack, however, refused to let the disease end his career. He learned to communicate by whispering and through the use of a mechanical device that created artificial speech. Directors, unwilling to lose his talent, continued to cast him, and his dialogue was often dubbed by other actors. Despite this, his physical presence, sharp eyes, and dignified manner still commanded the screen. Those who worked with him said he carried himself with extraordinary grace, never allowing pity or frustration to define him. In his final years, he focused on mentoring young actors and writing about his experiences in the film industry. His memoir revealed a man of humility and wisdom who had come to understand the fragility of fame. As his health declined, he spent more time at home with his wife Doreen and their children, finding comfort in family after decades of public life. When he died, tributes poured in from across the world. Critics called him the voice of British courage, and colleagues remembered him as a symbol of perseverance. Even without his voice, Jack Hawkins continued to speak through his legacy, through the stoic heroes he brought to life, and the quiet strength with which he faced his final battle. If you admire the resilience of old Hollywood legends, share your thoughts about which actor's legacy continues to inspire you today. Number 11. Aldo Ray. In March of the year 1991, the strong and gravel-voiced actor who once embodied the American soldier and working man died in Los Angeles after a painful struggle with throat cancer complicated by pneumonia. Aldo Ray had been one of the most recognizable faces of post-war Hollywood, with his broad shoulders, square jaw, and rough charm that made him both intimidating and deeply human on screen. His journey to fame began after World War II, when he returned home a decorated Navy veteran. That real-life toughness became his trademark in films like The Marrying Kind, Pat and Mike, and The Naked and the Dead. During the 1950s, he was a favorite of directors who wanted realism, a man who could project power without pretense. But behind the camera, Aldo's heavy drinking and smoking became part of his daily life, habits that eventually took their toll. By the late 1970s, his once booming voice had turned coarse, and his health began to decline. Producers who had once sought him for major roles now gave him smaller parts, often typecast as gruff policemen or aging soldiers. Friends said he never complained about the industry's fading attention, but quietly missed the days when the camera loved him. When throat cancer was diagnosed, he understood the irony. The same deep voice that had built his career was now being stolen by disease. He tried radiation treatment, but the pain was relentless. Speaking became difficult, and he often communicated through brief notes or hand gestures. Despite his weakness, he continued to work in low-budget projects, saying that acting helped him forget the illness. His final years were marked by financial hardship, yet he retained the dignity of a man who had lived life on his own terms. When he passed away at 73, only a small group of family and friends attended his funeral. There were no grand Hollywood tributes, no fanfare, only quiet remembrance. Still, for film lovers, Aldo Ray remained a symbol of a bygone era, when actors were built from raw authenticity and carried their scars with pride. His deep voice, once powerful enough to fill a theater, may have faded, but his screen presence continues to echo through every frame he left behind. Number 12. Edgar Kennedy. In November of the year 1948, the film industry said farewell to one of its most beloved comic actors. Edgar Kennedy passed away in Woodland Hills, California, after a battle with throat cancer that ended a career spanning more than 3 decades. He had been known to millions as the master of the slow burn, that exasperated look of frustration that could make audiences burst into laughter without a single word spoken. His journey began in the silent film era, working with pioneers like Max Sennett and appearing alongside comedy greats such as Laurel and Hardy. With his bald head, expressive eyes, and perfect timing, Edgar became a fixture of early Hollywood humor. When sound came to cinema, his deep, gravelly voice added another layer to his comedy. Ironically, it was that very voice, polished by years of yelling and laughter on set, that would one day betray him. By the mid-1940s, Edgar started to feel persistent pain and hoarseness. Doctors diagnosed throat cancer, a disease for which there were few treatment options at the time. Despite the discomfort, he continued to work, refusing to let illness define his final years. He appeared in several short comedies and supporting roles, often hiding his pain behind his trademark scowl and impeccable comic timing. Those who worked with him said he never complained and still found joy in making others laugh. In his final months, speaking became difficult. He spent more time at home with his wife and daughter, away from the lights and cameras that had been his second home. Neighbors often saw him sitting on the porch, a cigar resting in his hand, though he could no longer smoke, watching the California sunset with a faint smile. When news of his death reached Hollywood, fans mourned quietly but fondly. He had never been the star of grand epics or glamorous dramas. Yet his face and expressions had brought comfort and laughter during some of America's toughest years. Edgar Kennedy's passing marked the end of an era in comedy, a time when humor lived in subtle gestures and human frustration, not in words. His silence in death felt heavy, yet even without a voice, his legacy of laughter continued to echo across generations. Number 13. Mike Evans. In December of the year 2006, Hollywood lost a quiet yet influential talent whose creativity had helped shape American television. Mike Evans passed away at his mother's home in 29 Palms, California, after losing a long battle with throat cancer. He was 57 years old, known for playing Lionel Jefferson on the groundbreaking sitcoms All in the Family and The Jeffersons. Mike had also co-created the hit series Good Times, which became a cultural milestone for African American representation on television. His illness developed gradually. Friends later said that Mike had been dealing with throat problems for several years before doctors confirmed the cancer diagnosis. True to his private nature, he told almost no one. He preferred to keep working behind the scenes, writing scripts and developing projects rather than appearing in public. Those close to him said he faced the disease with calm acceptance, rarely showing fear or bitterness. In his early years, Mike was a pioneer. At only 21, he became one of the first young black actors to appear regularly in a primetime television series that dealt openly with race and class. His charm, intelligence, and humor made Lionel Jefferson a household name, and his writing talent later brought depth and humor to Good Times, which celebrated working-class resilience. Despite his success, Mike avoided fame, focusing instead on creative expression and family life. By the early 2000s, his condition had worsened. He stopped attending public events, spending most of his time near family and old friends. Those who visited him described him as peaceful, often surrounded by books, music, and notebooks filled with story ideas. Even when speaking became painful, he continued writing notes and short pieces, saying that words were his way of staying alive. When he passed away just days before Christmas, tributes came from former cast members and fans who had grown up watching his shows. Norman Lear, the legendary producer who had given Mike his first big role, called him a gifted spirit who changed television forever. Though throat cancer silenced his voice, his words still resonate in the laughter and lessons of the sitcoms he helped create. Mike Evans left behind not only performances, but a legacy of creativity, courage, and quiet brilliance that still lives in American pop culture. Number 14. Jan Hooks. In October of the year 2014, the entertainment world mourned the loss of one of its most talented and underrated comedic actresses. Jan Hooks passed away at her home in Woodstock, New York, after a long and private battle with throat cancer. She was 57 years old. Best known for her years on Saturday Night Live, Jan brought to life unforgettable characters and impressions that defined an era of American comedy. Her wit, her timing, and her unique ability to balance humor with vulnerability made her a beloved figure among peers and fans alike. Her illness had begun quietly. For years, she had stepped away from the spotlight, rarely giving interviews or making appearances. Friends said that she wanted her work to speak for itself, not her personal struggles. As her health declined, she moved away from Los Angeles, seeking peace in the countryside where she could paint, write, and reflect. Though her voice was growing weaker, she still spoke with the same sharp humor that once filled studio audiences with laughter. Jan's rise to fame in the 1980s had been swift. She joined Saturday Night Live in a time of transition, helping revive the show with her sharp performances as Hillary Clinton, Tammy Faye Bakker, and other pop culture icons. Her chemistry with Phil Hartman and Nora Dunn turned sketches into classics. Later, she appeared in Designing Women and Third Rock from the Sun, earning praise for her warmth and intelligence. Yet behind the laughter, she was known to be deeply introspective, almost shy, a perfectionist who found the fast pace of Hollywood overwhelming. By the final year of her life, Jan's illness had advanced to the point that speaking and breathing became difficult. She stayed close to her family and longtime friends, including some from her Saturday Night Live years, who visited quietly to offer support. Those who saw her said she remained gentle, funny, and grateful, still capable of making others smile, even in pain. When her death was announced, tributes poured in from comedians and actors across generations. Tina Fey called her one of the greats, and Bill Hader said her influence could still be felt in every sketch performer who came after. Jan Hooks left the world as she had lived with grace, humor, and an unmatched spirit that will forever echo in the halls of American comedy. Number 15. Don Megawan. In June of the year 1981, Hollywood lost one of its towering figures, both in stature and in presence. Don Megawan passed away in Panorama City, California, after a battle with throat cancer that had slowly taken away the deep, commanding voice which once made him a staple of mid-century American cinema. Standing 6 feet 7 inches tall, Don was known for his roles in science fiction and adventure films, most notably as the land creature in The Creature Walks Among Us, the final installment of the classic monster trilogy. His illness was first noticed in the late 1970s, when he began having trouble projecting his lines. Doctors diagnosed throat cancer, a condition likely worsened by years of heavy smoking and long working hours under studio lights. Don underwent treatment but refused to retire. He told friends that acting was in his blood and that stepping away from it would be like giving up on life. During those years, he continued to appear in television series and small films, often dubbing over scenes when his voice faltered. Known for his professionalism and humility, Don remained kind and patient with everyone he worked with. Directors admired his quiet discipline, and fellow actors often described him as a gentle giant who carried both strength and warmth. As his health declined, he focused on spending time with family, especially his wife and daughter, who were by his side through every hospital visit and round of treatment. In his final months, he lived a peaceful life away from Hollywood, tending to his garden and spending quiet mornings reading the newspapers. He knew his time was nearing its end, but faced it without fear. When he passed, the news was modest, buried beneath other headlines. Yet for fans of classic cinema, it marked the end of an era. His imposing frame and heartfelt performances left a mark that still endures in the memories of those who cherish the golden age of American film. Don Megawan's life was a reminder that greatness often exists in the quiet shadows of Hollywood, among those who gave everything to their craft without ever demanding fame. Thank you for watching. If you love stories that bring forgotten legends back to life, remember to subscribe for more. See you in the next video.